You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Empress Conversations with Maggie. My guest today is Dr. Pamela Moolenaar-Wirsiy. She is a native of the Virgin Islands. She's an HBCU graduate, molecular biologist, mother of 8, world traveler, sister, wife, daughter, friend, minimalist, and fitness enthusiast. She's kind-hearted, positive thinker, a free spirit, a lifelong learner, dean of innovation and student success, interim vice provost of enrollment management. Welcome, Dr. Wirsiy.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to have you as always.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, Pam, do tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you got started with your love for education.
Oh, geez. I think, oh my gosh, I can't remember when I didn't love education. It probably started in my formative years when I was, a wee little tot, maybe 2, 3 years old. My grandmother used to kind of teach me at home, right? The alphabet, the numbers. So by the time I was 4, I was reading. And my great aunt, my father's aunt, was a principal at a elementary school. And you know, the island way, I went to kindergarten at 4. Like real kindergarten, not pre-K.
Wow.
Yeah. And because she noticed that I was ready. And so I just kept going and I loved it. And so I just kept going. And when I went to first grade, I was advanced. They put me straight to third grade. And so I finished high school. Consequently, I actually graduated at 15 because my birthday was in 3 days after graduation. So about 16. And so, yeah, I always loved education. So I just was kind of brought up in it and kept the love of education going.
That is awesome, Dr. Pam. That is absolutely awesome. What would your advice be for someone who wants to pursue being an entrepreneur but does not want the higher education? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, you get education in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be in a classroom. As a matter of fact, we educators are learning that you have to get education in and out of the classroom. So it goes together. You can educate yourself by reading, researching, especially in today's day of YouTube Academy, that's what I call it, or YouTube University. And there's a myriad of information on the net. Of course, you have to know what is a credible source and what isn't, but you can really do your own research on lots of things and teach yourself how to do things. Now, it's always, in my estimation, a good idea to get a formal, good scaffolding of information by a formal education, but you can still educate yourself about just about anything.
You are so right about that. You're so right. I definitely believe you need to trademark the term dream chat. Do tell us more about that because I actually benefited. This was the start of this whole venture here with the dream chat. Do tell us.
Yes. So in my classes, when I teach classes, I require my students to come to my office. Number one, so that they could find out where my office is. But number 2, I require an initial meeting and I call it the dream meeting. Of course, they're like, what is that? Right. So when they come, it's usually after the first quiz or test. And I do talk to them about, however they did on the quiz or the exam. And I give them some pointers. I ask them some questions on how they think they prepared so that I can kind of better know whether or not they're truly struggling or they just didn't study. And at the end of the conversation, or really not at the end, but it's really the beginning of it, I ask them, why are they here? And of course, they have a puzzled look on my face. I say, not here in my office right now at 11, right? But why are you in college? And then they usually tell me, I want to be a journalist or whatever their major is, they usually go into that spiel. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. I said, now, what is your dream? And I usually get a pause and they say, what's my dream? I said, yeah, what is your dream? As in, what do you want to wake up and look forward to doing every day of your life? And it doesn't have to be whatever your major is, what you just told me.
Mm-hmm.
And about half, seriously, about half of the students, they really have to think about it and they say, I don't know. And I find that a little disheartening because that means they haven't really explored their dream or they don't think it's worthy to share. And so
Mm.
that is, it's just disheartening. So I try to encourage them to share it with me. I say, I don't care if you want to be a professional football player and you think it's far-fetched. Tell me, what is your dream? And then it comes out. I had one of our football team members in my class, and I asked him, what is your dream? Of course, he said he wanted to play football professionally, blah, blah, blah. I said, is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? Because obviously there's a time limit on that.
Right.
And I think his major was business. And I said, but what do you really want to do? He said, do you know what I really want? My dream is to be a professional photographer. And I said, are you really? I said, that's awesome. Have you taken a photography class? And he had not. I said, now, see, you have space for electives. You have to start taking a photography class immediately. And then I asked him, where's your camera? Like, where's your camera today?
What did you say?
He's like, well, I mean, it's at home, but I said, okay. So, and then I start to educate them on when you have a dream, you pursue it every single day of your life.
Mm.
And so I said, you shouldn't go anywhere without your camera because guess what? You're going to catch something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how you hone your craft.
That is so good. I want to dig a little bit deeper, Dr. Pam. So you said something that really caught me because you said some of your students don't feel worthy. Do you find a discrepancy between the which gender feels they're less worthy to even talk about it?
You know, that is an interesting question because and it might be because I am a female. I don't know how the gender dynamics really work here, but the females are usually very open and very comfortable sharing their dreams with me.
Mm-hmm.
It is the males who are sometimes hesitant.
Wow.
And so I don't know once again, I said, I don't know whether it's because I myself am a female and they feel like maybe telling me and they think it's not something that they should be dreaming about. I don't know how to say that, but it's true. Like this big old football player that wanted to be a professional photographer.
Wow.
You know, so perhaps it's me and that whole dynamic. But yeah, the female students are usually very open and very willing to tell me what their dream is, the ones that know. And the ones that don't know, that is the homework I give them. So they have to come back for a second dream meeting and they have to actually think about what it is they want to do. And like I usually tell them, I said, you know, I think you know it, like way back here, it's in there, but you may not have formulated it or you may not want to tell me. And you don't have to tell me all the big hairy dog details. I want to know that you have it, that you have formulated it, that you've thought about what you really want to do with your life.
Well, you know, Pam, I remember being in school 20-something years old, and I had no clue at all. So I don't think the light bulb truly went on as far as what really gives me joy and what I was tolerating versus what my true passion was. So for those young people or someone who's probably just turned 40 and discovered this is who I am and this is what brings me joy, is there an adult version of this, dream meeting? Or how does someone else really, because it's a difficult thing to try and figure out what your calling is or where your passion lies.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you say that because I did the same thing to you. A few months ago, we were just having lunch, and I do this to almost all of my friends. They probably like, I don't want to go to lunch with her anymore. but honestly, I find the opportunity a lot of times to ask, are you living your passion? Are you doing something that you truly enjoy, that brings you satisfaction, happiness, and joy? Because it really comes from you. It comes from you. things on the outside add to it or subtract sometimes, but it comes from you. And I find that when you are living your passion, when you are doing something that satisfies you, I don't care what that thing is. It could be crocheting. You could want to crochet things for less fortunate. You could, I don't know, you could do anything. But when it brings you joy, you tend to live that joy. Actually, it comes out and you see it. You see people who you think, oh my gosh, they're such a happy person, or and you see them and you ask them why. They're probably living their joy.
That is so on point. See, this is why you are Dr. Pam. So, Pam, let's switch gears for a little bit here, because being part of the international community, how has it been for you personally, switching from the Caribbean side to the African side to the American side in your professional life? And then I've also seen in your business, in your home life, because depending upon who you're speaking to, we both do it, right? You switch according to who your audience is. But how has that been for you?
That's an interesting question, and actually, we talked about this year at my university, because I'm currently at the University of the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, and we understand that sometimes that we call it code switching, right? That code switching is almost required in some situations. The reason being, if I were to speak 100% in my dialect with my accent, you probably won't understand what I'm saying. And that's just true, right? It's just a fact. And so how will you effectively communicate if the listener cannot understand what you're saying? It doesn't work. Communication has to be spoken and understood and heard. So if you can't, one of those missing, it's ineffective. And so we realized that sometimes I do have to slow down my speech, enunciate and pronounce things properly, and use appropriate grammar. That's life.
It is.
It is, especially if you are communicating in English, right, to another English speaker or someone else who understands English. And so we have to do that. I find it very natural because as I was growing up, first of all, I was surrounded by educators. And although we speak with our accent, we speak very proper grammar. My great aunt, like I said,
Right.
the principal of
English,
my,
ma'am.
that's it. Like you spoke proper grammar. And so it wasn't very difficult. And then I also, when I was, I guess, in middle school, my family moved to New York for a few years, about 4 years. And so that was kind of a cultural shift for me because, of course, I was straight from the Virgin Islands, accent, dialect, everything. And the kids were like, "What are you saying?" So I had to quickly adjust and start speaking so that they could understand me. So that shift became almost automatic.
You hit, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that, Pam, we're doing this interview while Tropical Storm Fiona just literally passed over the Virgin Islands. And, Dr. Pam was sharing how there was no electricity, no light. So every once in a while, we're having a little bit of a glitch with technology. We apologize for that, but we'll keep pushing through here. And I thank you for being so patient, Pam, as we go through this. Going back to code switching, now I can actually identify this because I know for me personally, that was a challenge because certain people had identified that as being fake. And so, if I'm speaking to one community and then I switch over, but it's like, I'm still me. I'm still always going to be Maggie. But at the end of the day, it's who I'm speaking to at that time. But then some people, "Oh, you're just being fake and you're speaking this and and I'm like, get over yourself. I'm comfortable in who I am and I'm communicating at the end of the day. So I applaud you for at least now I have a name to go with it and, clarifying what that is.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like I said, it's needed, it's necessary in certain situations. If we spoke a totally different language, if I spoke Italian, let's say, and that was my native tongue, and I came on here and I started speaking Italian to you and you don't understand Italian, what would be the purpose of our communication? None, zero.
Exactly.
And so my goal is to communicate with my listener. And so I have to speak the language they can understand. It's the same if you're speaking to a 3-year-old. You're
Mhm.
not going to use the same vocabulary as you use with me. You're not going to use the same, you're going to adjust so that you communicate effectively. It depends on what your goal is, right? If your goal is to communicate effectively to your listener, then you do that.
I love that. I love that. So, in all your years of education, why do you feel, in your opinion, let me clarify myself. In your opinion, why is there a rift between African Americans and Africans culturally?
That is a really deep question.
Mm,
And I've asked because I don't know if you said this in my intro, but I am married to a Cameroonian. We've been married for, oh wow, 26 years, I believe. And so I
Can I
lost
just
that.
pause here? I have to give shout out to Uncle Giddy. Woo woo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've lost track. But anyway, it's been a while. So I've been around the Cameroonian and African community for a lot of years, for more than half my life. And so I've asked that question actually to some of my African just friends and colleagues,
Mhm,
why is it that you all have a certain perception, I guess, of Black Americans, right? And
mhm,
some of them have said, we find that they are not as hardworking or as committed to success as we are. Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
And I just listen because guess what? I
What?
observed that too. Sorry. I do. But you know what? I don't think it's just Black Americans, obviously, right? I know white Americans and Asian, I know all kinds of people that are just not that committed to their success. But I think that when Africans come to this country and they see people that look like them, they expect them to be like them.
Mm.
If a Black American were to see an African without hearing them, they would think they are a Black American, right? I mean,
Right.
they expect some type of, synonymous experience, and that is not what the Africans who immigrate see in Black Americans.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it is just, kind of misunderstandings. And as Africans who immigrate come and find out the history of
Yes.
Black Americans in this
Yes.
country, they
Yes.
then start to understand some of the behavior they see. So I think it's ignorance on both sides. Black Americans on how they kind of see Africans, and Africans on how they see Black Americans. I think it's ignorance as we get to learn more about each other and each other's not just culture but history. Then you
Mm.
start to understand the behaviors that you see, and then you're a little more, I guess, accepting of those behaviors and start to understand, okay, now I see, why this might be this way or that.
I love that, Pam, because that actually, we're not going to solve that whole issue in this one conversation, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. One thing I really have to say is I've heard it personally in conversations where friends of mine from the Nigerian community would basically have that conversation with their parents before coming over, first generation. Now, when you get to America, don't go acting like those, people there that do drugs and all of this other stuff and referring to African Americans. And, most of the time you see immigrants who come here and education is so important. It is, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be something in that profession with Africans. But if somebody wants to be a fashion designer, it's not easily received for the immigrant parents in Africa versus a doctor or a dentist or some professional degree versus somebody who wants to do something creative. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that is spot on. And I've had that experience myself.
Mm,
And being an educator, I mean, my husband and I both have advanced degrees
mhm,
from universities. And
mhm.
so when raising our children, it was just understood that after high school, you go to university. That was just it. There
Mm.
was really no further discussions
There
needed.
was not. It is
Right.
what it is.
It is what it is. Until, of course, the youngest ones always test your gangster.
I love
They
that.
test your gangster. And so my youngest, which are twin girls, um, the eldest twin said, so getting close to high school, junior year. So you start talking about colleges and what you want to do. And, she was like, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go. As a matter of fact, they went to, what do you call it, dual enrollment, started taking classes early, college courses. And then I said, okay, so what do you want to do? Like, what do you want your major to be or whatever? And the eldest twin said, I want to be a cosmetologist. And I said, okay, no, you don't understand. So that's like that's like on the side. What do you want to be in college?
Uh-huh.
And she was like, no, that's what I want to be. And my husband and I was like, okay, let's think about this. But then, getting back to the dream meeting, I thought, she's always loved it, by the way. She's always loved doing hair and makeup and, all this kinds of stuff. So I saw that as her talent, really.
Mm-hmm.
And she was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, if this is what she's thought about this, she's actually thought about it. And this is what makes her happy. This is her passion. And you do have to go to school for it. It's not like you could just, up and down, at least in this country.
Right.
So I said, so you really want to go to cosmetology school? And she said, yeah, they give an associate's degree. I want to do that. And we said, okay, all right. Again, the elder children was like, what? Wait a minute. She's not getting a bachelor's, You mean I could have done something like this? But honestly, we had to adjust and realize that, when someone is pursuing their passion, it's okay. It's okay. It's their life, number one, right? Although us, African and Caribbean parents think it's our life still.
Right.
It's their life. Everybody individually has to seek their own joy. You can't give it to them. If I could, I would have given away all of my joy to all of my kids, everybody I love, but I can't. And so they have to pursue it themselves.
I love that, because knowing your family, I could just imagine that conversation. I just love that. But like you said, the youngest one will try your gangsta. That I can appreciate that. I can really appreciate that. Thank you. Pam, we once discussed having a plan, say for the diaspora who have family members back home and they want to start a business. And at that time, you talked about a plan that you actually sat down in your family and said, this is what we would like to do. Because more often than not, people are constantly sending money, but what's the plan? And can you share that? I would love for other people to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. Coming from immigrant families, especially from the continent of Africa, but other continents as well. But of course, I'm familiar with African continent. You oftentimes the family back home, they are sometimes struggling financially, and they think that you are in America, therefore you have money because you have opportunity. Sometimes it is true, sometimes it is not. But in any case, that is their belief. And so they write to you often or call you. Now they can call on WhatsApp and things that are much easier. Way back, 20, 25 years ago, you spoke to someone in Africa on the phone every 3 to 6 months, literally. And you paid a fortune to do it. But now they can send you a text message on WhatsApp and ask for money. So now what we do, my husband and I, is when somebody writes and asks for money, as they inevitably do, we ask them, what is the plan? And they usually say, oh, I want to start a business or something of the sort. They don't just ask for money just, to do their hair or something like that. At least they don't say that's what it's for. So, they'll write and ask for money and say they have a business idea. And we say, okay, what is it? Send us your business plan. And then we require them to have half of the investment. Then we will match. We will match your investment. And so that shows us that you are invested in this. You're not just saying, I want to start a business to sell, some of my farm produce. Okay, that's great. What are you going to put into this? We're not going to just be 100% investors. So you have to show something. And sometimes they come up with half, sometimes they come up with a quarter of it. And to me, that's good enough. right? So we don't tell them at the beginning that it's okay if you only have a quarter. We try to get them to come up with half of. If they tell us they need 100,000 francs, we say, okay, when you have 50,000, let me know. I'll give you the other 50,000.
Now, I love that because that's incentive. You worked your part of it versus just expecting 100% of the funds to come through. Pam, your bio is so expansive. I literally just read the Cliff Note version of your bio because you've done so much from your work at Georgia Tech and over at Hampton, and now you are in the Virgin Islands. In a way, your professional career has been your entrepreneurial business. But what has been the biggest aha moment in your journey that you really had to pivot and change the way you looked at things or the way that you managed your career?
That's a really good question. When I started, well, first of all, I got my PhD in molecular biology and immunology. So I was doing research, and I absolutely love research. I love discovering, asking questions. I just love that. So as I was doing my research, I was kind of moonlighting on the side just to get some money because being a poor graduate student is being a poor graduate student. And so I was moonlighting and teaching on the side. And I taught at, oh gosh, a lot of colleges around Georgia, but I loved teaching. So I actually thought I was going to stay in research for the rest of my life because I really loved research. And so I think that the big pivot was actually into education. So much so when I finished my doctorate, I was, interviewing for postdocs because we do postdocs like MDs do fellowships, right? So we do a postdoctoral research fellowship. And so you go on interviews, and I had an interview and an acceptance actually from the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, Maryland, to do some research, right? Very prestigious. They accepted me. And so my mentor at Morehouse School of Medicine, he's late now, Dr. Urso, he was so excited because, here's one of his graduate PhD going now to the National Cancer Institute. That is that's something of pride. And I thought about it and thought about it. And at the same time, I had an offer at what was the then DeKalb College to teach a full-time teaching position. So that was my choice. That was my decision. And I really thought about it. And then I chose DeKalb College. Dr. Urso was floored.
I can imagine.
Right. His mouth was like, what? You mean you gave up a fellowship at the National Cancer Institute? He was really shocked. But I realized once again that my joy came from teaching. And so I went with that. I went with my joy. And I never regretted it. So so that was a big pivot for me because, and he actually, he, I guess it was a compliment in his mind, but he said, you have such a fantastic mind and you're going to waste it teaching. Again, he thought it. Yeah. It was a kind of compliment-ish because he thought that my research mind was too rich, right? To go into just teaching. And I put the just in quotes. He thought I should contribute, and I could have, right? Continue to contribute to scientific publications and figuring out issues and problems in immunology. Yeah. But I wanted to give that to people directly. And so that was my big pivot.
Wow. Literally jaw just dropped here for those who are just listening, because that's a big deal. That is a big deal. In your time at Hampton, do tell us about the time that there was a big program that was started while you were there.
Yeah, so I was an American Council on Education Fellow in residence at Hampton University in the 2019-2020 cohort. And if you remember, that was when the pandemic hit, right, in 2020. But also that year, Hurricane Dorian obliterated the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
and other islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the president of the University of the Bahamas was actually an ex-colleague from Hampton University. And so when Dorian hit, President Harvey, president at that time at Hampton, called Dr. Smith and said, "Hey, how y'all doing? What's going on?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, it's really bad. It's it's done. Like the University of the Bahamas is has been destroyed. One of the campuses was totally leveled." And so Dr. Harvey at the time said, "Well, you know what?" And it was mid-semester, right? It was like in the middle of the whole school year. And he said, "Look, if you have some students that want to finish the semester, if they can come, they can come to Hampton. They can come. We have some space. They can come. Don't worry about, the cost of it or whatever. We'll just bring them, we'll house them, we'll feed them, and we'll educate them." I mean, I thought that was such a huge offer. And then he had this conversation with Dr. Smith, walked down the hall to me and said, "Okay, so Pam, here's what I just did.
Make it happen.
Can you handle this? Can you make this happen?" And I said, "Of course." It was just the fact that, number one, I have been so close to hurricanes and damage caused by it and the upheaval it causes in people's lives, that I felt connected to this project. And so I just started, we worked literally 24/7 for about 2 weeks. And we brought 45 students from the University of the Bahamas to Hampton University. We got JetBlue to sponsor the flights. We got all kinds it's amazing sense of community that came together to bring these students here. We welcomed them with the band and the cheerleaders, and oh my gosh, they were crying. They were so happy to come. And after that semester, we of course extended it to a second semester. So they stayed with us they stayed with us the whole year. It was awesome. So like I had 45 new kids. Since
Wow.
I was the point of contact. And I still communicate with some of them, 2 years later. And they're now graduating, most of them from the University of the Bahamas or wherever they went to. So it was an awesome experience. It just goes to show sort of the sense of community and how we can kind of help one another just by thinking about doing it, and we all come together and then do it.
That is fantastic. Pam, with all the different transitions you've had in your career, and 8 children and a new grandma, all these wonderful relationships in your family, it has gotten to be a situation where you now have a well-oiled machine, because you're now full circle are back in the Virgin Islands. So you left and then came back, and you're based in the Virgin Islands right now. How has that been for your family and the support system, to where you're managing your career, your family, and just all the different dynamics that make you a happy and giving individual?
That's a really good question. So let me explain my 8 children, because
Yes, please do.
yeah, let me explain. So
Mhm.
I have 4 of my own, right? I have 3 girls and a boy. My last 2, my twins, are girls, and then my first is a boy, and second is a girl. And then my 4 nephews, whom we raised, my husband's nephews from Cameroon, who came over kind of one by one, as the years went on, starting in, I think it was in 2000, or was it 99? It was in 2000, starting yet. So that's 22 years now.
Wow.
They came over to go to school, and stayed, got jobs, went to grad school, and so now they're all grown. The eldest has given me my first two grandkids, and they are all fantastic young men, and they're all young men, right? 4 of them. I mean,
Mhm.
just really, really great. And people go, "Oh my gosh, how did you do it with 7 or 8 kids in the house at once?" And it was such a blessing to me. It really, really was. They're such good people. All of my kids are good people. And so I really give my husband credit, and myself. I mean, we really worked well as a team to
Mm.
help and guide these kids. They're all individuals, but we are always here to guide and just give advice. We don't dictate, especially now they're grown. Everybody's grown. The babies are 22. So we're done with the kind of, full-time parenting. But you're
Right.
once a parent, always a parent.
Wow.
So that never ends. So we're happy to share now in their lives. That is part of our joy, is sharing in their lives, that
Mm,
they are now, that we can now see kind of the fruits of our labor, all of the talks and the
mm,
guidance and all of that. We are now seeing it in action. And
mm.
that is so rewarding. And so they all live in different parts of the United States, and one lives here in the islands with me. She actually preceded me in moving to the Virgin Islands. When she graduated from college, she came back, got a job, um, finished her master's degree at the university here. So she is doing great, loving it here, and I love it too.
Yes, you do. Pam, as we get ready to end our interview, are there any last parting words that you would like people to know about the programs that are offered at the Virgin Island school that you're at, or any other parting information that you would like to share?
Yeah, I would like to first congratulate you on doing this. See, what people don't know, and maybe you said this, I don't know, but what people don't know is this entire podcast journey was born partly out of a dream chat that I had with Maggie. And we were at lunch, and just random, we just met for lunch one day in downtown Decatur. And I asked her, Maggie, what is your dream? Maggie, you've done a bunch of stuff, and you've done it well, by the way. But what is that thing? And she said, I have this dream. And I said, do it. I said, you got to do it. You've got to do it. And she said, okay. I think I'm going to do it. So congratulations to you for doing it. Having a dream is one thing, acting on it is another. So I congratulate you for doing that. Kudos for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
No, and it's true. It's true.
And what about the programs at the Virgin Islands?
That's right. That's right. The University of the Virgin Islands is the only HBCU in the Caribbean. So it's a historically Black college and university in the Caribbean. We have a fantastic marine science program, undergrad and graduate programs as well. We just have so much to offer. In addition to our beautiful campus, we
Mm,
have absolutely great programs. I think we have over 60 majors, and we have a school of nursing. We have a school of agriculture. So depending on what you want to do, and of course we have school of business and all that kinds of stuff as well. But just visit us at uvi.edu or follow us on any social media platform at the University of the Virgin Islands, and get to know a little bit more about us. I am the Dean of Innovation and Student Success, and I'm the Interim Vice Provost of Enrollment Management, which is like admissions and recruitment and stuff. So if you have any questions, just go to uvi.edu, and there's a FAQ, and you can ask questions there, and I'll get them. So just reach out and find out a little bit more about us. We have some great things going on.
absolutely. And can I just plug in that the school also offers a marine program? I mean, how cool would it be to study? You're in an island and all these wonderful, innovative things that are going on with marine biologists. So just a little plug there. But my
Yes.
sister, my mentor, my friend, Dr. Wirsiy, I adore you, and I thank you so much for this time and this opportunity. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Empress. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.